Our guest is Tom de Waal, a specialist in the Karabakh conflict, a senior expert at the Carnegie Foundation. Thank you, Tom, for this opportunity. They are shooting on the border every day. Do you think that Azerbaijan will use heavier forces in Karabakh?
I think what we can say about the situation is it's inherently unstable, by which I mean, unfortunately, violence is happening all the time. Often it's hard to know exactly what is happening. But I think at the moment, there's also a diplomatic track continuing in Washington, new talks expected also in Brussels. So for that reason, it's unfortunate that we're seeing this level of violence, but I think it would be, I don't think we can expect a major escalation. From the Azerbaijani side, as we've seen, for 2 years now, the tactic is, they use the term coercive diplomacy. It's to use both force and diplomacy. So that means that we sometimes see an escalation, but it doesn't rise to the level of full-scale war, as long as the negotiations are carrying on.
Going to the negotiation, do you see any chance, any opportunity to keep Karabakh Armenian in this situation?
Well, obviously, this is absolutely the main question. This is, obviously the talks ongoing are about some kind of bilateral peace agreement between Baku and Yerevan. And clearly this government in Armenia has gone much, much further than previous governments, basically in recognizing the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. It's doing this obviously under some international pressure. It's saying that you have to accept that Karabakh, idea of Karabakh independence has gone. But on the other hand, it's also clear that no Armenian government will ever just completely give up on the people of Karabakh. So this, I think, for the last year, even longer, has been the topic. What kind of guarantees can be given to the people of Karabakh? And here, obviously, we're hearing different things from different players. As far as the Russians are concerned, their security is guaranteed by Russian peacekeepers, maybe rather imperfectly. I think talking to people in Karabakh, clearly they are much less happy, disillusioned with the Russian peacekeepers, but they also know that they are better than nothing. And then from the Americans and Europeans, we're hearing this language about some kind of international mechanism, international presence. But of course, that could mean many things. It could mean just some kind of international office of the OSCE, or it could mean some kind of security presence. And I think this is obviously what the negotiations that we're not really seeing are going on behind the scene. And obviously, this, I think, will obviously be the main determinant for the people in Karabakh. Do they feel that if their future is basically inside Azerbaijan, and they don't trust the government in Baku, what kind of international presence or international mechanism will be given to them? And we just don't know the answer. And I would probably even go further. I think we're seeing, and this I think is part of the problem, we're seeing different people inside Karabakh with different answers. I'm sure that that if you were to ask Vitaly Belasanyan and Samvel Babayan, you would get different answers, and some would Rumen Vardanyan, I'm sure, would say, oh, we need to be there with the Russian peacekeepers, and then Samvel Babayan would say we can do a deal with the Azerbaijanis, and I'm sure you would get and so I think this is also part of the problem, why we have no clarity on this issue.
But in general, are there any international mechanism that can protect Armenians of Artsakh?
Well, I mean, we see in different conflicts around the world, we see some different kinds of international presences. You know, if we go back to Abkhazia before 2008, there was UNAMIG, there was the United Nations civilian mission, which was there in parallel with Russian peacekeepers. That would be one formula, although I don't know if Azerbaijan would accept that. Then you see in Cyprus for more than 50 years a full-scale UN peacekeeping force. And then in other places in the Balkans, you just see some kind of small OSCE office for national minorities. So there are different international presences in different international conflict zones. The problem, as we all know, since the war of 2020, is that Azerbaijan is in a very dominant position, militarily, politically, geographically, in terms of they are basically, in control of all the regions around Karabakh. So they are in a position to dictate terms. So really the decision will be made, I think, partly in Baku, partly in Moscow, partly in Western capitals, and then I'm afraid only rather finally in Yerevan.
By the way, there are some optimistic predictions in Armenia that it can even lead to the deployment of international peacekeepers. Is it a possible scenario in this atmosphere?
Well, it's one scenario, but if we hear what the Azerbaijani leadership has said, they have consistently said that they want the Russian peacekeepers to leave and nothing to replace them. We haven't seen any language from Western leaders saying that they would deploy peacekeepers there. So it's one scenario, but I don't think it's a very likely one. Personally, I think it would be a stabilizing option. Azerbaijan could accept this peacekeeping mission with some kind of expiration date, maybe for 5 or 10 years, and this would stabilize the situation. But obviously, that's not what we're hearing from Baku. And I think the other issue here is that in Baku, they feel they are in a bit of a hurry, that they feel that the international situation is favorable for them because Russia is weak and distracted and not in the position to dictate terms, that they have President Erdogan now re-elected. The Europeans are also, talking to them about gas. That will not happen forever because Europe has a decarbonization agenda. So I think in Baku they feel that they have maybe a window of 1 or 2 years in which they can get quite a favorable outcome for this.
So you think Yerevan is able to reach this goal?
I think I've already said that although Yerevan is not the main decision maker on this. I think what Yerevan's cards are basically that Yerevan can say no to plans for the road across Nakhchivan. That's a card that the Armenian side can play. So it's a rather negative card. It's saying that if you want this road and rail link across Nakhchivan to be reunited with Azerbaijani territory, then you need to cooperate with us, and you need to cooperate with us also on the Karabakh issue. But that obviously non-cooperation there also carries the risk of the Azerbaijani side using force. So it's not such a great option either for Yerevan.
On the other hand, does the West offer those mechanisms? As you mentioned, the foreign minister of Armenia and Azerbaijan have been negotiating in Washington for several days. Then Nikol Pashinyan and Ilham Aliyev will meet in Brussels.
Yes, but I mean, first of all, the Washington track is very much focused on one document. It's on the Armenia-Azerbaijan bilateral document on normalization of relations. I don't think that the foreign ministers really have the authority to talk to one another about Karabakh. The presidents do. So the presidents, when they meet in Brussels with Charles Michel, they also will talk about Karabakh, and there will be attempts to come up with something there. But again, even in Brussels, as we know, they don't have they can't offer something on the security. So that's when the Russians come in, the talks in Russia. So we have these three different levels of negotiations, which is, I think, part of the problem is that every the Washington and Brussels formats are connected, but neither of them are connected to the third level, which is in Russia. And of course, the Russian agenda, I think, let's be clear, is more about Russia, and it's about what Russia wants than it is about Armenia and Azerbaijan.
If Azerbaijan rejects any foreign intervention in the Karabakh issue, is it possible to see pressure from West on Baku to pursue this?
I think we'll continue to see negotiations. I don't think we'll see pressure. I think there will be. I think Washington and Brussels are both giving President Aliyev the message not to use force again in Karabakh, which is one reason why I think the use of force is quite limited. I think President Aliyev is trying to squeeze Karabakh economically and using the Lachin Road and so on, rather than to use full-scale force. Although, of course, we are seeing incidents of violence. So I think in that respect, Washington and Brussels have a kind of deterrent effect on Baku, but I wouldn't describe them as being prepared to use strong pressure. No, I'm afraid.
Why is Russia not capable of protecting the Armenian population in Karabakh and preventing depopulation?
Well, I think that's a question that you should be asking our Russian colleagues. They deployed a peacekeeping force there, but they weren't able to agree a mandate. They basically have watched many of the incidents. I think maybe the quantity of the Russian peacekeepers is not so different. It's probably not much lower than it was in 2020, but I think the quality has gone down. I think many of the officers, high-ranking officers, have gone to Ukraine, so I think it's a lower level. I think we're seeing, obviously, when we hear from Karabakh, that the peacekeepers are using this blockade for business purposes, as they have in other conflicts, of bringing in food and products and selling it for high prices to the Karabakh population. That's very cynical. But I don't think that. I think President Putin has other things on his mind. His own survival. We saw this with the Prigozhin mutiny. What to do about Ukraine, what to do about the West. I don't think he has much time to think about the Caucasus at the moment.
Does it mean that they will soon leave Nagorno-Karabakh?
I think neither in Baku nor Moscow they have an incentive to leave now. I think that the most likely thing will be that the Azerbaijanis in May 2025 will veto the extension of the Russian peacekeeping force, so that it will leave in November 2025. But of course, between now and then, many things can happen.
Thank you, Tom, once again, and let me remind that we were talking with Tom de Waal, a senior expert at the Carnegie Foundation.